Hello and a very warm welcome to the Big Bright podcast. My name's Emma and today I'm joined by Laura Barban from the Brighton Chamber of Commerce. It's official, the world is now online whether we like it or not. For those whose business model focused on in-person events, things needed to shift pretty quickly this year, as the Brighton Chamber of Commerce knows only too well. Pre-March 2020, they had never run an online event before, and fast forward to November and they had 170 under their belt. So what was it like to run so many online events in such a short space of time? We invited Laura, Events and Programming Manager at the Brighton Chamber, to tell us the story of their journey to becoming exclusively online and give us her top tips. So, hello and welcome to Laura.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in. So before March, obviously the Brighton Chamber had never run an online event. Can you tell us a little bit about how you knew which technology to use and how to set it up? And were you quaking in your boots?
We had to very quickly do our research, which involved talking to a lot of our members, talking to them about what platforms they were using, how they were doing it. And then it was just a case of doing it as much as possible ourselves, which was a little bit scary. We held our last in-person event, which was a bite-sized learning with the brilliant Emma Mills Sheffield on March 17th. We then moved out of our offices on the evening of March 18th, which was great fun. And then March 24th, we held our first mini member meeting, which was sort of with about 6 to 8 people. And then just 9 days later, which was crazy, we held our first actual virtual event with about 15 people on Zoom, which was a coronavirus business interrupted loan sessions, as exciting as it sounds.
So you had to put that together quite quickly.
Yeah, in a matter of 9 days, which,
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun though. And we're fortunate the team all came together. We sort of just really worked hard to almost break Zoom, so then we knew what would go wrong, which was good. In those 9 days, we were using Zooms for team meetings and we ran multiple trial runs. And yeah, we just had a really intense few days getting up and running, and we were fortunate it went okay.
That's quite interesting, the concept of breaking Zoom. I think, did you know to use Zoom straight away? Like, was that something you were using elsewhere, or was that just the kind of technology that you thought, oh, we need to use this?
We had Teams as a team, horrible name for a platform, and I don't find it easy to use at all. But Zoom, we just figured out quite quickly, did what we'd need it to do. So it gave us the control that we needed for events. It had the waiting room, which was perfect because it could be as much like a real event as possible, which was our aim with them. So yeah, it was good. Mm-hmm. It worked out okay, but it was definitely a bit crazy. Yeah, talking about quaking in your boots. So we then, in October, we ran Basecamp, which was Brighton Basecamp Bananas. That has been our biggest, most complex event. So we had 145 attendees from about 100 different businesses, and it was all on one Zoom link. So there was no kind of, I've seen other people do it where they sort of create a program and you can click on different links and do different things. We just had, you joined the link in the morning and you left the link at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And from that Zoom link, we ran 5 workshops, we ran 2 or 3 networking sessions, and we had 3 keynote speakers. We also had someone dialing in from Greece. So it was all a bit mental. And the lady from Greece, when we joined her, she's absolutely brilliant, Lynn Golby, who was one of the co-founders of the Picture House. But she joined us in the morning. She was like, oh, just so you know, there's been a storm and the telephone pole might be taken out, so you might lose me. I was like, okay, you're our 3rd keynote speaker. That's fine. It'll all be good. And we didn't lose her. She was on a tiny island with no real support. Normally her son would go out with her, but he hadn't because of COVID. Yeah, that was crazy.
So that was a quaking in your boots moment.
Yeah, definitely. Just to add to the fun, midway through, I managed to almost pour a cup of tea on my keyboard just before we were about to do the breakouts for the workshop. So I had a list of 100 and something people all ready to go into their different rooms and do these 45-minute workshops. And my desk was covered in tea. Fortunately, James Dempster didn't realise, but managed to just keep talking. And he didn't even know that this had happened, but I think it was just some kind of subliminal thing. He covered, and so I had time to clean my desk and then send everyone away all fine, which was good.
Heart palpitations just thinking about it, because I don't even like being on the end of a Zoom rather than facilitating it. So yeah, kudos to you guys to do that.
It was fun, but it did help. We went to Sussex Innovation Centre, Sync, and we were there as a team. So we had 3 different rooms. And so me and Daisy were kind of running the headquarters or whatever, HQ, from one room. Amy was with James and Laura in another room. And so that made it a lot easier because it meant rather than having to WhatsApp someone and being like, oh God, this has happened, it could just be like, right, run to the other room, tell them this, run back again. Yeah, so that made it a lot less stressful, but not much.
Oh, God. So in your opinion, do you think that networking can be as effective online as it is in person?
I think it can be, and potentially even better. I mean, the one thing that you need to do is treat it as much as you would real networking. So I think it's quite easy with online networking to kind of forget that you still need to make those connections, you still need to chat to people. And it can be, I imagine it can be quite overwhelming for people as well, because you're suddenly thrown into this situation. There's none of the preamble or the, oh, there's someone I want to talk to and walking up to them, or, oh, I don't want to talk to you and walking away from them, which is equally as frustrating. I think if you come prepared, make sure that you have something that you want to ask people for, not that you're just trying to sell your own wares kind of thing, always really helps. I think people can find it quite frustrating if they join a networking session and someone's just like, I've got this amazing product that you all need to buy. If they join and say, I'm launching a new product and I really need a photographer or a video person, can you recommend? Then it's a much better conversation.
I've been in those networking situations where someone comes over and you know it's just a pitch to you, and it feels a bit kind of invasive.
Yeah, and you're not there to be sold to, you're there to make connections. And I think that's the really important thing to remember. It's not about sales. So we do like an event called Slow-Mo Networking, and people are in groups of 3, which means that you move on automatically and that you're moved around a lot and you never get caught with the same person for too long, which is why I think online can maybe be a bit better. Because I know I've been at networking events and you're chatting to someone and you're just like, I'd love for this conversation to end, but I can't be polite. Yeah, and it's really tough. And everyone you meet networking is brilliant, but with online networking, you've got no choice. You've got 3 minutes, you're in a room together, and then we'll chuck you out and put you with someone else. So you make the most of it, but if it isn't comfortable, then you're only in there for 3 minutes. So it's quite...
Perfect. It's like speed dating.
It is, yeah.
You're forced to move on.
Yeah. So if you meet Mr. Ugly and you're like, I have no feelings for you, I'm not interested, then, or Mrs. or yeah.
Move straight on.
But no, I do appreciate it's not for everyone though. And the Chamber is doing all they can to sort of get back to real life events as soon as we're allowed, not as soon as possible, because Boris keeps changing his mind and who knows what he's going to come out with next.
Yeah, well, so which tips would you give those trying to network to make it as effective as possible online?
So my 3 top tips would be one that I sort of mentioned before, which is come prepared. If you've been sent an attendee list, read it. Think about who you'd like to meet. You can email the host, talk to them and say, look, I'd really like to meet this person for XYZ. Can you make an introduction at the event? You might find that if they can't set you up at the event, that they can introduce you afterwards. So really important to just do your research. And I also think it's important to think about what you're actually going to say to people. So online impressions count as well as offline impressions. And you need to make sure that what you're saying, you can be clear, you can be succinct. She says as she's rambling on, but just make sure that you've had a think about it and that you're not just kind of spieling loads of information at people, because it's quick online and it's quite easy for people to lose interest. If you're staring at a screen talking to someone, you just kind of think, oh God, they're going on, all right, I'm just going to start looking at my phone. And because you don't have that face-to-face thing, you really need to make sure that you are being succinct and you are being clear.
Because I guess you take away that sort of social cue barrier, don't you? It's really important to really read that person on the screen, which can be really hard, can't it?
Really,
their cat might jump up on their lap and it might all... That actually is quite nice, isn't it? Because it sort of provides a bit of an icebreaker in a way.
Yeah, we're all guilty of it. You'll be on a networking event, but you'll have your emails coming up next to you. And as soon as someone loses your attention, you're like, oh, Bob's just emailed me, right, I'll just quickly... And you can't tell on online networking, it's tough. The other thing I think is really important is don't let it be a one-time meeting. So follow up on the connection, whether that's just literally sending them a connection on LinkedIn and saying it was great to meet you this morning. You might not need them then, but James, the videographer, 10 years down the line, you might need a video. And actually, if you've kept that connection warm, then you can go back to him and say, James, I'd love to work with you. We met, da-da-da-da-da. You have to make the most of networking and you have to just keep it going. It is tough and it's time consuming, but it's worthwhile in the end. One thing which I know this is number 4 and I said top 3, but it's only really relevant to not online networking. And it's something that I think a lot of us fall foul of is make sure your Zoom name is correct. So don't join with iPhone 64. Don't join with Beth's babysitter or something. Make sure your name is right, because if you're chatting to someone, it will save so much time if they can see, oh, you're Emma, brilliant, and then just get on with it rather than being like, so what's your name? What's your company?
That is a really good tip.
thanks.
And one that I think a lot of people just wouldn't even think about, because you set it up years ago and then you sort of just start using it, don't you? And I realised that I was using a Skype name from like my old company. So I was still like Rickshaw Travel Emma. I was like, what? No, this is awful. I don't work for you anymore. And it took me ages to work out how to change it. So then, sorting that sort of stuff out beforehand is really useful.
It's the little things. And I think if you just have 5 minutes in advance, pop onto your account, make sure your details are all correct. I mean, like Remo, I think Remo, you can set up a profile on Remo. So you can add your LinkedIn, you can add your Twitter. It takes 2 minutes, but then the amount of time you'll save that someone can just click on your face, find your LinkedIn profile and connect to you, rather than saying, can you send me a link, drop me an email, If you were at a real life event, you'd have a name badge, you'd have your business cards. You can't pass a business card through your screen anymore, or ever. Not even anymore, but so
do you think people use business cards much coming to just before lockdown? Like, because I feel like whenever I went to events, it would be more about meeting or connecting on LinkedIn. But then I suppose you've got to remember that person's name, so it is just easier to, chuck a business card at them.
I think so. Our slow-mo networking events, people definitely used to use business cards, and I'd always have some with me. I can't remember the last time I gave one out, obviously pre-March. It's one of those things that it just makes life easier for people if you can just hand them a document, and it's the same thing online. Just make sure you've got your info ready.
Good tips. So we'll link all of those tips in the blog post. So many of the events focus on interesting speakers, and that's how you can reel people in. So how do you find or attract people to host or contribute to your online events?
So we have a quarterly events meeting, and then we have a weekly team meeting. The whole time, everyone is on the lookout for people doing their research, checking in. So we will create lists. We will then go through those lists and kind of say, no, they've done this, they can't do this, and break them down. And we also talk to our members as well. So we've got over 600 members. So although they are 600 members, all of those members are part of a business, and it's actually their business that's the member. So we'll talk to all of those businesses, find out if there's someone with an amazing business story. So that's kind of the starting point. And then there's a lot of professional stalking via LinkedIn and checking people out. And then so if we see someone and think, oh my God, they'd be brilliant, we then check them out, see if we've got a connection in common that we can then talk to them and say, look, you know them, can you set this up?
So that's another reason to keep your LinkedIn in top-notch condition, because you never know who's stalking you.
Yep, and it probably is a chamber team member. We are regularly on there. The other thing we have is Sarah Springford, and she is our secret weapon. So Sarah is the one that got Gina Miller for the summit last year, which was outstanding. Gina was amazing. And that was basically, she went to something that Gina was at, spoke to her and said, would you do it? And Gina said, yes. I won't tell you any of her other tips because I'd be letting away too much of her secrets. I'd be
ballsy,
giving away.
Basically.
Yeah, she really is. I mean, it's incredible, some of the stuff she does. You're just like, you're brilliant. She's been with the Chamber 10 years and she knows anyone there is to know. Yeah, looking for speakers, she's definitely our secret weapon.
Good. So how do you promote the online events to the members and the wider community? So are there specific channels that you find work better than others, and what are they?
So first and foremost, we will always start with an email. We've got a good database with our members, and that's probably the quickest way. But then we'll sort of complement that with some videos. So we've been working with Laura Evans of Let's Talk Video Production,
who is producing this very podcast.
Yep, and she's been doing some great videos for us, which is, we've been using videos a little bit, but we've never really put so much work into them, and it's rewarding, it's good. So we're getting lots of views that we weren't getting before, and there's a lot of engagement with the videos, which is brilliant. We also then have a number of brilliant copywriters that we work with. So I cannot stand writing. I used to do it for work and I do not love it, and so we've got these great people that we can say, right, we've got this event coming up, here's the information, go forth and create something amazing, and they do. So that's the other thing that we do. We make the event sound enticing.
That's your shop front, really, isn't it, online?
It is. So if they don't sound great, why would someone sign up for them? They need to sound good. And then social media as well, and word of mouth. Even though we're online now, at our offline events, we used to say at the end of them, here are some events coming up. And we still do that on our online events. We talk to people and say, this is what's coming up. We'll then follow up with an email. So yeah, we use a lot of different methods.
So which social media channels do you find work best?
If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would have said Twitter, but I think LinkedIn is really coming into its own, and it's brilliant now. As long as the one thing that we always try and avoid doing is selling on LinkedIn. You need to create something engaging that people aren't just being told, here's an event, buy a ticket. They're being told, here's this amazing trainer, here's their top 5 tips, want to find out more, here's a ticket or here's a blog post or whatever. So yeah, LinkedIn is
I've noticed
brilliant.
that LinkedIn's really where, I mean, we've been using LinkedIn a lot for Bright, and yeah, it's amazing that something that we wouldn't have probably thought about using so much last year, or people had a profile but they weren't really doing anything, and we weren't really doing anything as a company, but now it's all about sharing the stories, and it just seems, yeah, a completely different platform. And I think that has changed a lot this year and come into its own. So it's interesting that the events, but it makes sense because, you know, the people you're trying to reach are on LinkedIn and they're looking to better themselves or educate themselves in some way, or to network as well. So it's the perfect platform, really.
Yeah.
I still do like a bit of Twitter.
I still do, and we still use Twitter a lot. I've just found that if you want people to engage, LinkedIn's a better forum, whereas Twitter, they might like it, they might reshare it, but they won't comment or they won't say, yeah, this is great. It will just be like, oh yeah, that's nice, and that's it. And the nice thing about LinkedIn as well is when someone starts engaging, it then just goes everywhere. People that are looking for jobs, you can just comment on that post and it gets shared within your own network. And it's the same with events and things. If you get people to engage with it, then it just goes and spirals, and it's brilliant.
Just out of interest, because with Bright, so we have a Bright LinkedIn profile, but then I also encourage everybody that works for Bright to share the post as well, because it feels like the algorithm does favour, you know, personal accounts, of course. So do you sort of do that tactic within the chamber as well? Are you all kind of having your own, you know, personal profiles to promote chamber activity?
100%. I mean, our business page gets so much, but actually it's all of our own personal networks as well. And because we're all strong networkers and we've networked so much, there's just all sorts of people, and it's all the people you used to work with that you've worked with locally and stuff. And LinkedIn, I think, is actually picking up on that, because I noticed recently I did a post and LinkedIn actually said to me, do you want to share this with everyone in your business and encourage them to engage? So that's a new feature that's come out, and I think it does for like 24 hours. Anyone that says they work for your business will get a notification to then engage with the
little
post.
button, isn't it? It says notify your employees, but it only lets you do it once every 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah, which is really interesting, because LinkedIn's obviously saying, okay, this is working well, let's encourage it, which is great because it means you get more bandwidth. Is that the right word? Or spread? Or
What is the word? Coverage.
More coverage, that's it.
Traction.
Yeah. So you can tell it's Monday morning.
You can tell it's Monday morning. So for those who are nervous to run an online event, which I'm sure are many, because there are a lot of things to consider, do you have any top tips to help that transition?
Yeah, and the big one is just practice. Before I went online, I sat in my kitchen with my iPad, my phone, my work laptop, and I created 4 or 5 different Zoom accounts for myself. I then put these devices all over the house, because otherwise you get feedback and it's horrible. But I literally just sat there. I mean, my husband thought I was losing the plot. I sat there and I would put myself in breakout rooms and I would do this so I could get it from both the user experience and also setting it up. After doing that, we then did it as a team. So we would have team meetings, and halfway through the meeting, we're like, can I just put you guys in a room together? See you later. You have fun, which is always good. All events that we've done, we've practiced them first until we're sick of doing them, but it just means that we know what could come up. Of course, Zoom then changes all of its settings, which is great fun, but it's worth doing it. And talking about settings, you need to get your head around them. So Zoom app has X many settings, but actually if you go into your online web browser and check the back end there is so many more. And it's really silly things like you have the option to have co-hosts or not, but if you don't tick a box in the back end, you can't have co-hosts in the front end. Fortunately, we discovered that very early on, but I was talking to someone and they're saying, why can't I set up a co-host? And I was like, have you been in the back end? Have you checked it all? And it's all these tiny little things that if you don't go through, I mean, I've sat probably about once every couple of months, I go through all the back end settings of Zoom and check if they've added anything new that we should be aware of, like when they took away the passcodes for events, or you don't have to have a passcode, or they made waiting rooms mandatory. If you don't know about it, you don't know what you're not doing. So
maybe following them on their social media as well to see whether they are, updating things would be a good idea.
Definitely. And signing up for their mailing list, they send a lot of stuff out. And I appreciate that I've only talked about Zoom, but it's the same with Hopin, it's the same with Remo. They're good as well because they'll set up practice events and you can join them and experience it with the actual creators, which is obviously going to be the best way to do it because they will literally show you everything. They want to sell you a product, so you're going to get the best of the best. Yeah, it's practice, it's do your research, and just the more you do it, the more confident you'll feel about it. You don't want to be putting on an event that you haven't done a trial run for and have 40 people and then you're saying, oh, sorry, we're having a technical issue, because you haven't played with it enough to get it right, basically.
It's just practice.
It really is.
So how do you measure the success of an online event, and do you collect feedback from your attendees?
We do. So we use SurveyMonkey. MailChimp has just brought out a new survey feature. So we will send follow-up emails and we'll ask people, but we also talk to people. So the Chamber, we're really fortunate. We've got a group of ambassadors who've been with the Chamber for a while, or they're also just really engaged, and we'll chat to them and say, you were at this event, what did you think? And they'll be honest with us. We've had some brutal feedback. We've had some great feedback, but it's honest feedback, and that's what's important. And like after Basecamp, we did a survey to everyone that attended. And if we repeat Basecamp, which we're hoping to do in the spring, we will use that feedback to build the new event. So changing things slightly and making it what our members want, which is what we're here for.
So it's such an important thing to schedule in that time to actually reflect and have that retrospective with members. And I imagine people are really brutal, because I think some people just, it's just feedback is different for different people, but sometimes you just got to hear it, haven't you? And then take the positive from that and then run with it, because it will improve.
We are happy to get any feedback, even if it's brutal. We'd rather know it, because you can't fix if you don't know something's broken. And so if someone says to me, you know what, I came to that event and actually I thought it was shocking. I thought you should have done this. I thought you should have done that. I'm cool with it. It's heartbreaking. And I'll be like, oh God, Sarah, someone's really cross with me. But at the same time, it's actually like, no, it's positive because we can do something about it. And what I'd hate is for someone to come to one of our events, hate it, never say anything to us, and not come to an event again, because I don't want someone to have that experience. My job is to give them a good experience. So I need to know the good and the bad.
I feel like you've got a thicker skin than maybe most.
We've got a lot of wine at home, which helps. Most definitely.
So we touched on this before, but we've all been on our fair share of Zoom calls where technology's failed. And have you experienced any heart-stopping moments, even though you prepare to the end? What is your advice to ride out those heart-stopping moments?
I think everyone on Zoom has had them. So I put people into breakout rooms, and they brought in this new timer feature in the background where you could say, all right, I want the room to close in 15 minutes. I don't want you to notify me. I want it to automatically happen. Never made the mistake again. I closed the room in 5 minutes. So I sent everyone away, and there was nothing I could do. I was sitting there in the background texting Amy like, Amy, I've done something bad. You're coming back. And everyone sort of came back into the room. And I was like, I'm really sorry. Didn't mean to do that. Off you go again. And they all saw the funny side of it. And people are quite forgiving with Zoom. It won't last. I know it won't. But right now they are, because we're all in this situation together, and it's like that camaraderie. People are together, they're working together, and they appreciate it. I mean, like many, I've had incidents with pets. So we have 2 dogs at home, one of which is nearly about 7 months. Really regret getting a COVID puppy. She's mental. We love her, but
what breed is she?
So we've got one Frenchie that's 9, and then we've got this new one which is half Frenchie, half English. She's mental. So Co is like this really slow, chilled, relaxed dog. Bella is the opposite. Like, you could not have 2 more separate dogs. She jumps like a rabbit. So you name it, she can get onto it. She's just crazy. So there's been a number of events where she's snuck into the room behind me, and my poor husband has literally crawled into the room so he can't be seen on camera, desperately trying to whisper her out of the room. The other day I was on a technical call. So before all of our events, we have a technical call with everyone that we're on the event with, so we can check their setup. And Bella, for the first time in God knows how long, had fallen asleep on me, which she hasn't done since she was tiny. And it was really cute. But halfway through this call, she woke up and just stretched in front of the camera, and her head just appeared. I was like, sorry guys, dog woke up.
I love that though. I love the human side of those calls. Like my cat, I've got a really big fluffy ragdoll, and she just loves to, like, whenever she hears a voice, she just kind of like presents herself and then struts. But people love it. They're like, oh, this is nice. And, you know, and I think it does show the human side, and it just gives an insight to people's lives outside of the office, which I think was kind of needed in a way.
There is nothing I like more of when you're on Zoom calls with people, seeing where they live and like their not their personal spaces, because it's normally a working space, but like seeing what's on the wall behind them, knowing that actually they're an avid Liverpool fan, or they play the guitar, and you're like, oh.
Or their husband walks past in their pants, which my partner's done a few times.
Oh God, yeah. We have
runs from one side to the other.
It's terrible. We actually had someone, and I still don't think they know to this day, so I won't say their name. They were on a call, and their wife walked behind, and she was getting changed. And I was just like, oh. And they clearly didn't realise, because they were in between talking, so they probably weren't watching the video themselves. I was like, you know what? It's not even worth.
Better not to. Not to know.
Definitely.
Until it shows up on YouTube. It's like the top 10 hilarious Zoom fails.
But yeah, there's so many elements that you can't control with Zoom, and you just have to, like we said before, everyone's in it together, and you just have to kind of ride it out and try not to worry too much, but make sure that if something is going to go wrong, that you've got a backup plan. So like we've had speakers say to us, I might not be able to make it for that time. Like, okay, that's your time. That's fine. We'll move things around, or we'll have something else prepared. Or, I mean, anyone that uses Virgin Media, I feel so sorry for, because it's always going out. So if someone's going to be doing a presentation, then we'll say to them, right, send us your presentation. So whatever happens, we can always run it from our screen whilst you're talking and save some of your connection or whatever.
That's a great idea. I use Virgin Media, but actually, touch wood, it hasn't been too bad. You said online actually makes things much more inclusive for people to join these events. So, you know, single parents that might not have been able to come on before, people with childcare issues. So even if you have got, you know, a child or a pet or whoever popping up, at least that person has access to your events, which maybe before they just wouldn't be able to make, which I thought was a really nice point.
Yeah, it is. And it's even, I mean, someone that just lives a little bit too far out of town or doesn't have a car and things like that, to that extent. So we've had people coming to meetups that we hadn't seen for ages, and they're like, because I can. And it is really nice. And yeah, I think we were talking about, we had an event where a parent was just sitting with their child on their lap, and it was cool because it was a nice, easy event. And it was lovely that they felt that they could as well, and they don't have to hide it, and they don't have to pretend that children don't exist or pets don't exist. Yeah, it's a really nice thing, actually. That's one thing that I think that's come out of this. Everything feels a lot more inclusive, a lot more connected. It's a nice change.
And maybe there'll be like a hybrid formula when we go, I say back to normal, I hate this, back to normal, but you know, when the new phase of life comes in, that maybe we'll have something where you have, you know, part online, part offline, you know, and people can just tune in, because we've all got our, you know, finger on the pulse a little bit more with how to run it. So why not continue into 2021?
Yeah, I think definitely we're already talking about plans to, because we know it works and we know we can do it. And in some ways it's unfortunate, in some ways it's good, but we can run 2 events in a day now because we can do morning and afternoon. And it means that if we know that lots of parents are going to be on the school run, then we can run a little event a little bit later, because we're not traveling to a site. They're not having traveling to a site. They can finish work, come home, jump on the computer for 10 minutes. So I definitely think that we will keep a hybrid of online and offline going forward. And I'm quite excited for that. I do miss face-to-face events so much. I just want to be able to rock up somewhere, do all like the prep, the excitement of knowing that people are going to arrive in 5 minutes and then they start coming in and it's just brilliant and you get to see people. I'm so craving a face-to-face breakfast or something, but I do think there is a place for online, and I do think we will keep some of them.
There's a slight anticlimax, isn't there, at the end of an online event where you just kind of press end and then it's like, here I am in my lounge.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever replace, you know, offline events. I think it's just nice to have the option, isn't it? And have, you know, and to have learned how to do it like you guys have had to do so quickly.
Yep, I will be adding it to my CV. Can do Zoom.
Definitely you can do Zoom. So finally, to finish off, who would your dream guest speaker be at an event if you could choose anyone?
It's really bad because of the job I do. I should have a long list of people, but I don't. I like to be surprised by people, and there's nothing that I like more when you have a speaker you've never heard of and they start talking and you're just like, you are amazing. I mean, if I chose someone that I wanted to meet, it would be like the Idris Elbas of the world or things like that. But that's shallow, Laura, trying to be. But yeah, I don't think there's anyone. I think the best speakers are the ones that you least expect. Therefore, I don't have a top list because I don't know who they are yet. I mean, for example, we had Stephen Grant at Basecamp, and Stephen Grant's a comedian by day, and that's his job. And then having him as a speaker, he has that comedic edge, but actually there's that real true story to him, which is really interesting. And comedians, they end up being presenters at award shows and things like that because they do the funny in between. But actually having him tell his business story was so interesting, and his work story and things like that. Yeah, so there's no top list for me. It's just someone that can surprise me, but by that fact, I don't know who they are yet.
Interesting. The surprise and the delight element.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. If anyone's interested in finding out a little bit more about the Chamber or joining, what's the best way of getting in contact?
Thank you for having me. So the best thing for them to do is have a look at the Chamber website. So we've got a great section called Why Join. It tells you about our membership fees. It tells you about the benefits. I'd also recommend having a look at our events calendar. It might seem a bit strange if you don't know what the events are when you first look at it. So we're actually working on some videos. So have a look at our YouTube channel, and then you'll get a real feel for the Chamber because you'll be able to see some of our events. You'll hear from some of our members. There's some really great content on on there. So I'd recommend doing that. And I'm signing up to our mailing list. So you'll hear about events as soon as they go live. You'll get the Chamber newsletter, which will tell you what we've been up to. Yeah. And then if you are interested in membership, you can contact us and talk to us about it. And if you would like to connect with myself on LinkedIn, my name is Laura Barban. I obviously work at the Brighton Chamber. So if you search those two things, I should, touch wood, come up.
The algorithm works.
Oh yes, fingers crossed. And if we have enough connections in common that LinkedIn then allows us to connect. But yeah, drop us an email and we'll be in touch.
Right, well, we'll link all of that on the blog post. So thanks again, Laura.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Big Bright podcast. Make sure to subscribe to never miss an episode and check out our website at builtbybright.com.